Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Secrets to Seed Beads. My name is Rose. This is what we did last episode. In episode 2, we made these great earrings that are made with a brick stitch and fringe, and we're going to build on the techniques you learned here and in episode 1 to go on to our third project. Oh ho ho ho, we're getting fancy now, which is this really gorgeous netted bottle. There's a bottle inside of there. So we're going to use a lot of different materials, obviously, a lot of different steps. You will want to have a bunch of size 11 seed beads. You pick the colors, it doesn't matter. On the bottom here, I use size 11 delicas, and on the top, I use size 11 Tohos, just so you know. And also on the very, very bottom, I use these really neat little pip beads. They look like watermelon seeds, so those are a good thing to know about. And of course, we have that great bottle. That's going to hold gemstones of your choice so that you can use the metaphysical properties of the gemstones in any way you need to. And then up at the top, I'm going to do a little bit of peyote stitch right here. Add on some little rings, some, not jump rings, little loops. Onto that goes this bolo cord, this leather bolo cord. And to hold it all together, we've got a couple of crimp ends and a clasp and a couple of jump rings. So I hope you enjoy this project, and I hope you stick with me through the whole thing, and I hope you make some. When you make them, make sure you send me a picture so I see what you did. So here we go, the netted beaded bottle medicine bag. All right, it starts with the ladder stitch, which we learned in episode 1 with the sun catcher, but we also used it in episode 2. We're going to do it again here. I'm using the gold size 11 delicas and a needle and thread. I'm using the smoke fire line, just like I did in episodes 1 and 2. And remember the ladder stitch? You pick up 2 of these tiny little delicas and you sew them around in a tiny little circle and make them lie side by side next to each other. So this is that ladder stitch again, the one we did in episode 1 and 2. And all you're going to do is keep on picking up these seed beads, going roundy round that figure 8 pattern. And I'm just going to give you a quick review. We keep adding these on in that ladder sort of method so that each of these beads is lining up like the rungs of a ladder. And we're going to do that until we get 7 of them. Then we're going to roll those into a disc. And ultimately, when we've kept on doing our ladder stitch, which becomes quilling stitch, we end up with, by stacking all that together, we end up with something that looks like this. This is going to be the base of our little glass bottle. That's where it's going to sit in the necklace. That gives us our framework. So this is, by the time you finish, you're making your little hexagon, it's going to be 7 beads wide, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 beads in a hexagon. So that's what you want to get to, and if you've forgotten how to do the ladder stitch or the quilling, refer back to episode 1. After that, we want to start adding these fringes. Now, we did fringes in episode 2. So, quick review of how we do fringes. And this one is a little tad bit different. Is, for one thing, if you watched it, I said, oh, I wish I had made these fringes a little bit longer. So I did. They are quite a lot longer. And because of that, I'm going to show you what I did here. So I've been working my way around, making these fringes all the way around, and I'm at this one. And I went down through this hole. This is going to be the underside of my bottle. I went down through this hole. I've added on all the beads I need. Now, each one of these fringes that I made are a different length, but you can make them any length you like. You can make them all the same. You can make them variable. These are actually longest in the corners where I am, and shortest in the middles of each side. But that's where this is right now, is I've made a length of fringe this long. And what's different is on episode 2, we just added one bead and then went back up through all of those seed beads. But in this one, we want to add that pip bead. I'm going to add 2 blues. 1, 2. Come on. They're very small and light, so they don't always do what I want them to. And 1 pip and 2 more blues. And this is where I'm going to make my turnaround on the end of my fringe. There's my, instead of going through just the last bead like I did in episode 2, I'm going to go through this gold bead here. And both those small little size 11s and that pip are going to be my stoppers. And the nice thing about that is it adds a little bit of weight to your fringe. I'm going to go back up through all of these beads. This might take a step or two just to get up that far. Don't miss any, it looks weird. Up through all of them until I get to the very top. I'm going to go back through that first bead I came out of on the corner there. Right through there. Pull all of this tight, but not too tight, because you know what I said in the first one, if you go too tight, it actually buckles and it doesn't hang right. Look at that. I said if you miss a stitch, it'll look weird. That's where I missed a stitch. Just so you know. So what I would do is go back down through that, pick that up, and come back through. Don't let that go glaringly by. But in this case, I think you've got the idea of how this fringe is made. I went down through all these beads. I went through 2 little beads, the pip, 2 more little beads, back up through all of them, and that finishes 1 fringe. I'm going to continue doing this on this hexagon until I get all the way around to get all the fringes. So we end up with something that looks like this. Very thick and luxurious fringe and tassel. But that's that step, and we're going to go on to the next step. So for the next step, let's say I've made all the fringe. And now I'm going to reveal how we're going to get started on that net stitch. Let's take a little break while I set up the things I need for that one, and I'll show you how it's done. And you see we've had a little bit of a reset. Now, isn't this tough to see? Because I'm still working with gold seed beads and with iris blue seed beads, but I've switched brand. I was working with delicas, which are cylinder-shaped beads, and now I'm working with tohos, which are round-shaped beads. Just to confuse people. I actually thought this would lay better on the netting part of this stitch. So we've got our quilled base for our bottle. We've got our fringe going down here. Now we want to start building the net on the top. Now this is a little tough to see, but you can see I've started building the base with these little toho beads. Little toho beads right on the top there. And I put one every 3rd bead. I haven't quite finished all the way around, so I'm going to go on with that. So last thing I did was I came out on this corner with that fringe, and it's kind of like I'm doing netting stitch. I'm just going to go through my bead and up a bead, and at this point I want to add another one of these little round gold tohos. See if I can get it where you can see it. So I'm going to add 1 more toho, and I'm actually going to skip this bead right here and go down here. So that bead will lie straight upright in the center, like that. I hope you can see that, right there. And then I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to go up through here. Add a toho, a gold one, This sort of a bronzy color. There we go. And I'm going to skip a bead and go down so that that toho is right on the corner. I'm going to go up a bead. Grab a toho. Skip a bead and go down. Placing these tohos. These are going to be the base of our net. Bring up. And I would have this entire fringe complete. I really want to show you the steps. And I don't want you to have to watch for an hour and a half while I finish all these fringes. I skipped a bead and went down. Go up another bead. Grab a toho. Skip a bead and go down. Up a bead. Grab a toho. Skip a bead and go down. Looks like I got one more to do. Up bead. Grab a bead. Skip a bead and go down. There we go. That is the base of our net. You can see I've got the little beads all the way around the outside edge now. And those are where we're going to start. So from where I am right now, I'm going to go up here. And now I'm going to come through the toho. And we'll start our net. And our net is going to be 2 of the iris blue, 1 of the gold tohos. These are all tohos, by the way. These are more of a round bead instead of a cylinder bead like the delicas. And because these beads are going to be changing direction a lot as we go, I thought it'd make a more smooth, cohesive design if I used tohos instead of the delicas. And I'm going to go through my next gold bead. And I'm not going to catch on all the other beads, I hope. Come on, there we go. And it makes a little triangle. And that's the beginning of the net. And I keep doing that all the way around. I'm going to do 2 tohos, a gold toho, 2 blue tohos, there we go, and through the very next up bead there. And you can see we're just going to make a series of triangles all the way around. We do one more. 1, 2, bronze color, 2 more blues. And again, you can use any colors you like too. Use your favorite colors. This kind of gives it an antique look, which is sort of nice. There we go. And we're just going to keep making those triangles all the way around. We end up with something that looks like this. So there we go. We've got a series of triangles all the way around. This particular piece, I haven't got the fringes on there. I thought that might be visually confusing. So I'm just going to leave those off for now so that you can see what I'm doing with the netting stitch, because that's the new part of our design. We learned how to do ladder stitch. We've learned how to do fringes. Now we're learning how to do netting. Okay, so we've got our little triangles all the way around, and I've come out this bead right here. That gold bead right there. That was one of our base gold beads that we started with. Now I have to step up the pattern to get to the top, the working edge. So I'm going to repeat up through these beads to get out of this gold toho up here. Up there. So now I'll be on the working edge of my pattern again. Now you can do a net stitch any way you want. I did 2, 1, and 2. So there's a 5 bead pattern here. I could do 4, I could do 3, I could do 7, anything I want. And in fact, I did, and I don't know why, just to confuse people. So if you look closely at the pattern of the finished bottle, you'll see I've got some that are 2s and some are 1s, and I just made it so it would fit the bottle, and I think I did that rather well. So it fits the bottle nicely. It gives a little variety to it, but you could make it the same all the way through. This second row, honestly, I want it to cup my bottle nicely, and I want it to tighten up a little bit. So instead of 2, 1, and 2, I did 1, 1, and 1. So second row, 1. Sure, that one didn't want to play with us. 1, 1, and 1. And just like before, we're going to go through that toho that's on the very tip of the next triangle. So it looks so complicated, but look at how easy this is. You just pick up your beads in any color you like, in any quantity you like, and go through the next tip of a triangle. There must be a lot of static electricity in here. My beads are not behaving. There we go. Just keep going through the tips of the triangles. That pulls the pattern up, turns it into the cup that's going to hold our glass bottle. 1, 1, 1. And once I get all the way around, we'll do the same thing again. We'll do a step up by going up through the side of one of that last triangle. And start the next row. Of course, when you're doing net stitch like this too, you will always be, especially when you're trying to fit something like fitting that glass bottle, you'll be doing a lot of testing. You'll take your bottle and you'll check it out, make sure it's still fitting snugly in there the way you want it to. If you're fitting a person's neck, you want to make sure it drapes on their neck nicely. So this is your basic netting stitch. And try and get you all the way around so you can see how it looks. Keep your tension tight so that it does fold up into the container you want it to be. And the last one. There. Oh, let's check that out. The bottle goes right inside there. See, now I'm getting concerned that, well, maybe I made it too small. So maybe this next time I'll do 2, 1, and 2. In fact, that's probably what I did in my mind. But again, I need to get to the outside of my pattern. So I'm going to go, this is actually a V shape right here. This is one of those little V's with this gold bead being the center of the V. If I pull it up, you can kind of see that this is just a tiny little V. And that's the one I want to get up through and out of, is that gold bead right now. So I'll go through these 2 beads, the blue one and the gold one, and I'll be up and ready to start my next row. Keep it tight. And I will make a larger row this time. I'm going to do 2, 1, and 2. I like an odd number so that I have a center bead that can be my base. So that's going to go through that bead right there. Pull it through. We're starting to make more V's. And we're going to keep doing that as long as you want your nets, and keep going all the way around and around and around until we get our entire bottle covered like that. Is that neat? Unfortunately, you can hardly see the stones inside of there. I've got turquoise and rhodochrosite and lots of cool stuff inside of there to provide all of its metaphysical properties that they have. So we've got a progression going here. This is going to build up into this. And I don't have one all built up like this. Instead, I'm going to show you one that's this minus all that. So this is imagine. Imagine this is your bottle that's entirely covered with netting, and we're at the very top. Because I want to show you how to do the top. I have a ring of beads all the way around the neck. Notice it fits nice and snug around the neck, because that's what's that and the base are going to hold this all together. And what I'm going to do now is the netting stitch again. But this time, the netting stitch is going to be very long. This is netting stitch. It's just very long netting stitch. Okay, so to make these long net stitches, what I've done is I've put on 25 blues and then a gold bead. Just like the other net, there's a gold bead in the center of this, and then 25 more. All right, I've come out this one going this direction. I'm going to skip one of my gold beads and go through the next gold bead in my progression. And pull that tight. And there is the next V for the net. I'll make sure you can see that. So don't be alarmed that this seems so crazy and long and big. It is the exact same thing. It's just more netting stitch. It's just a nice big long piece of net. And then from here, I'll add on 5 more blues, a gold, and 25 more blues, and I'll skip a gold bead and come down again and end up with this one. So here we are, ready to go again. We finished all of these little guys, these little big netting stitches with their little gold beads at the tip of each of these V's. So this is where we're going to go now, is we're going to step ahead in our techniques a little bit, because I'm going to show you just a little bit of peyote. That's why I finished these up. So I'm coming out of this gold bead here. I'm going to go around and pick up each of the gold beads in order off the tops of these. So I'm making a little tiny circle of the gold beads. That's 2. There's 3. Pulling them all together. Here's 4. There's 5. And here's 6. Now I'm going to go through 1 again to make this into a circle. I can go through 1 and a couple more if I want. But what we want is this circle of gold beads up at the top. Oh, that came together nicely so you could really see what I was talking about. How nice. There's a circle of 6 gold beads. Now in Peyote Stitch, you skip every other bead. So I'm going to make a tiny, tiny tube of tubular peyote here. Don't stress it. If you can't figure out what I'm doing just by what you're seeing, then we're going to see more of this in project number 5. So you might want to skip ahead if you're having trouble with it. Maybe you already know peyote and it's not a big deal at all. So I'm coming out of this bead here, right here. I'm going to add a bead to my needle. I'm going to skip this bead and go through this one. And the same thing again. I'm going to add a bead to my needle, skip this bead, and go through the next one. I'll add a bead to my needle, skip this bead, and go through the next one, which is kind of buried down here. So be aware of that one. That one is down there deep. And I'll do it one step at a time so we don't confuse you. And I'm also going to do a step up by going through the next bead. And this is called an up bead. You notice these 3 beads right here are now higher than all the other beads. These are my up beads. So go through there. That was my step up, so I can do the next row. Now I've got up beads. It makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. I've got 3 up beads, so I'm going to add a bead, go through the next up bead, add a bead, go through the next up bead, add a bead, and go through my next up bead, but this is the last one in the series. This is basically a 3 bead row of peyote. So this one is down a little, even though it is the up bead. It's the same height as that one. And I'll go through this bead, and now we've got a new set of up beads. This one, and this one. Those are my new up beads. Now I can continue this tube as long as I want, and I can make this nice long tube. But what I want to do is add my necklace, my pendant that I've created, to my necklace. So now it's time to sew on these 2 little connectors that I'm using. These are a neat little guy. And what I'm going to do, how did I do it on the original one? I've got to make sure I remember. Oh, I see. Okay. I made a little loop of seed beads. I don't know, 6 or 8 of them, as many as it takes. And I'm going to use the gold ones to connect with. I'm going to get my fingers in here and get these gold beads. Getting a lot of static electricity today, and they want to hang out on the end of my needle and not go down the needle. Let's see. Must be the change of seasons. What is that? 6, 7, 8. Here we can look at the original and see what I used. Oh, actually I did the blue beads. Well, this one's going to be different. It's going to have the gold beads. And I did use 8 of them. Okay, so I've added 8 gold beads on there. Good for me. You don't have to do what was done before. And I'm just going to go back and forth a couple times here. So I've added 8 onto the end of that little peyote thing. I'm going to go clear across the other side and go through a bead there. And there's my, oh, I forgot, I got to add these loopies. Before we add that, so we need to add these loopies now. They are not jump rings, so we have to put them on now because we can't open them later and add them. So I've got the loopies down here with all my beads. And we're going to skip across this little circle of Peyote Stitch beads and grab a bead on the other side and pull this all together. So I've got my loopies held in place by a loop of seed beads. And I'll go around a few times, just securing those, because as I've said before, I do not like to have any of my pieces hanging on a single thread, so I will go through this a couple times. So I'm going back through all the gold beads, which could have been the rainbow iris beads. It could have been hot pink beads. It's your choice. I hope you like the colors I chose, but you can use any colors you like. So I go through this a few times until I'm happy with it, until I feel confident that that piece of thread isn't going to break on me. I love the fire line. It's so strong that I do feel confident with it. And then, of course, we have to terminate the thread somehow. And that's hard for a lot of people. So I'm back down here at the base, and we'll just weave that thread in there. So now when I'm down here at the base and I'm starting to get to work on how to tie this off, I'm going to just skittle in, do some little weaving back into here to secure the thread. So I'm going down here, and I'm also going to add, now I want a knot, a half hitch. We talked about those in, I think, episode 2. Making half hitches, that's sort of a little extra security. And you can even add a dot of glue. I avoid glue most of the time. But one of the things I do like is once I've woven through here enough times that I feel that that thread is not going to come out, and I'm making a half hitch. Is I like to use my thread burner to finally terminate my thread, because when you use the thread burner, it makes a little melted ball on the end of your thread when you're using a nylon thread like Fireline. And that helps prevent that knot from coming out. Because as we know, a half hitch is not a very strong knot. More half hitches. Make sure the half hitch knot's in the place I want. There we go. I feel confident with that. And my thread burner. It gets really hot on the tip, but only for a second, and then it takes that thread off neatly and cleanly, and woo, yay! Now we're looking at something like this. So imagine on this one, we've already done the net, we've already done the fringe, and we've got this piece now. Time to add the leather cord. I want to show you on the complete, full, finished, netted, fringed, lovely, way to go, cool pendant with the stones inside and everything. Look at this. See, we made our webbing here loose enough. We can still get whatever stones we want inside of there. There's some turquoise you can see. I also have some other ones that provide lots of good healing energies. And so for the leather cord, I'm using bolo cord. And this is a woven cord. But I want to point out some really important things about bolo cord. It is woven, so the ends are taped. If I want to cut this, what I would suggest is to tape it where you're going to cut it. Just a piece of Scotch tape, nothing fancy. And then cut it right in the middle. And that way, you'll have already taped the ends to prevent them from becoming frayed. Now the piece I'm going to use was already cut, and check it out. Somebody forgot to put the tape on. They're going to come unraveled. Luckily they haven't yet. I'm going to be very careful so that I don't unravel the ends of this one, because I want to use this one. Okay, so to put this cord on, I'm going to use cord ends. These are a neat little, I love this one because it's a swivel cord end. So this little piece here actually turns around, so you don't get your cord twisted in a knot and everything. It always stays flat and smooth and flexible and wonderful. And it's super easy. You could use some glue if you want. I don't bother. I'm just going to put this right into that tube. I might get a little help from my pokey friend. And of course, I'm being super careful with this because nobody taped the end. So I don't want to have it come unraveled on me when I'm trying to do this. There we go. Poke that into the end. And you see there's even a little slot right here where you can actually see inside of there and see that the cord is getting all the way down to the end. And then, ta-da, get it in there. This is a crimp tube. So just like when you're crimping a basic necklace, except that this one's not going to use a pair of crimping pliers. I'm using my bent chain nose pliers or a pair of chain nose pliers. I make sure you see that little hole slot. That's where it's going to bend most easily. So I'm going to give that a squeeze. A nice hefty herky squeeze to squeeze it flat. I'm going to squeeze it on the other side. And I'm pretty cautious about it. There we go. We've got a cord end on that piece of leather. I can put it on my necklace. Put another cord end on the other side. Cautiously, and with the help of my pokey thing. Oh, this is a beading awl, in case you really want to know what it's called. If you search on firemountaingems.com, you probably won't find it under pokey thing. You'll want to search for it under beading awl, spelled A-W-L. There we go. So we got that cord in there. Give it a little crimping squeeze. Putting my jaws of my pliers where those notches are, because that'll fold it the easiest. Give it a squeeze. Give it another squeeze. I give it another squeeze for love. Ooh, we're getting there. And all we need now is a clasp. So here's a jump ring. I had a clasp. There it is. There's a clasp. And this jump ring, as I always say, make sure you twist them open. Twist them open. Boy. Twist. Add my clasp. Put it on there. Twist it shut, making sure that those end edges really join each other. And one more jump ring on the other side. Sometimes I like to use double jump rings too. Like I say, I like my jewelry strong. Ta-da! And we have a completed project, and you have learned another technique, the netting stitch, along with lots of fringe and lots of cool stuff and even a touch of peyote. So I hope you enjoyed this project. This is number 3 in the Secrets to Seed Bead series. Wow, I didn't realize that was such a tongue twister. Coming up next, we're going to be learning how to make this beautiful bracelet. This is using a loom, so we're going to go to a whole new different technique, looming. Hope you've enjoyed episode 3. Join us for episode 4. And in the meantime, share, like, comment. Let us know what you think, because it's your comments that make these videos happen. So thanks so much for joining me. My name is Rose. Happy beading.